Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, Section 27. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Untrodden Peaks and Unfrequented Valleys, A Midsummer Ramble Through the Dolomites, by Amelia B. Edwards. Chapter 11. The Fassa Thal and the Fedaja Pass, Part 1. The most unscientific observer sees at first glance that the lakes of Albano and Nemi occupy the craters of extinct volcanoes. The craters are there, cup-like, distinct, and tell their own story. You must climb a mountainside to get to the level of them. You stand on the rim of one, you look down into it, you may walk all round it or descend to the water level at the bottom. Nothing can be clearer or more satisfactory. But it is startling to be told that Fedaja occupies just such an extinct crater, and that the mountains which hem it in on all sides, the Monte Mulat, the Monte Vicina, the Weisshorn, and others, consist of igneous rock thrown up, lava-like, from that ancient centre, at some incalculably remote period of geologic history. For here is neither cone, nor mountain, nor amphitheatre of convergent slopes. Nothing, in short, in the appearance of either the alluvial flat or the surrounding heights, which may at all correspond to one's preconceived ideas of volcanic scenery. Yet here, as we are told by Richthofen and others, there must once have been a great eruptive centre, breaking out again and again, and each time throwing up a different kind of rock: the first syenite, then tourmaline granite, then uralite porphyry, then melaphyr, and then, last of all, porphyrite, and the unique syenite porphyry, famous for its crystals, and unknown elsewhere. It is this great variety in the material of the Fedaja rocks, and the immense mineralogical wealth consequent upon this variety, that has, for more than a century, attracted hither so many men of science from all parts of Europe. The town, now quiet enough, except as regards its commercial activity, is said to occupy the centre of the ancient crater. It stands, at all events, midway between Cavalese and Moena, just at the junction of the Fiemme or Fliem's valley with the Val Trifignolo. It is a very prosperous place. The people, though an Italian-speaking race, are wholly Austrian in their sympathies, and are supposed to come chiefly of a Teutonic stock. They are particularly intelligent, industrious, and energetic. They have a fertile valley, which they know how to cultivate, and mountains rich in mineral products which they are rapidly and successfully developing. As iron masters, as hay merchants, as wood contractors, they carry on an extensive northern trade, and travel annually for purposes of commerce in Germany, Hungary, Transylvania, and Switzerland. Large iron foundries and long lines of busy saw-mills give an unwonted air of activity to the place. New works, new yards, new and substantial dwelling houses are rapidly springing up in every direction. A new Gothic church with a smart roof of gaily coloured tiles, red, green, and yellow, has lately been erected on the south side of the village, and there become the centre of an increasing suburb. The schools are said to be excellent, and a well-informed priest, from whom I learned most of the foregoing particulars, said the children were full of spirit and intelligence. He also told me that there were now no noble families in Fedaja, but only a wealthy, territorial, and commercial middle class. He estimated the gross population of the commune at something over 3,000 souls. Prosperity and picturesqueness, however, are not wont to travel hand in hand, and it must be admitted that these foundries and timber yards by no means add to the pastoral beauty of the valley. They spoil it for the artist, just as the mills and factories of the last 20 years have spoiled the once romantic valley of Glarus in Switzerland. Still, down among the wooden houses in the old part of the village, where the women wash their vegetables and fill their pitchers at the stone fountain in the middle of the street, some quaint Proust-like subjects may yet be found. The old church, with its characteristic Tyrolese belfry and steep gable roof, is charmingly medieval, and the view from the meadows at the back of the Nave d'Oro, bringing in the two churches, and looking straight up at the Val Travignolo, to where the Simon della Palla and the Cima della Vesaza tower up against the distant horizon, seemed to me quite worth a careful sketch. While I was making this sketch, sitting in the shade of a little shrine among the field paths, 2 Austrian soldiers came by and stayed to look on. They were simple, friendly fellows, natives of Trient, and quartered, they said, with 3 others of their regiment in Predazzo. Not knowing that they acted in the double capacity of local police and military patrol, I asked what they could find to do in so peaceful a place. "Nay, Signora," said the one who talked most, "we have the work of 10 men upon our hands. Night and day alike we patrol the woods, roads, and passes for 12 miles in every direction. Our rounds are long and fatiguing, our intervals of rest very brief. We get but 1 day's rest in every 7, and 1 night in every 4 or 5. I afterwards learned that there were 5 other soldiers quartered at Cavalese, as many more at Moena, and so on throughout every petty commune, and that, according to the general impression, the men were greatly overworked." The Nave d'Oro, without disparagement of the inns at either Caprile or Primiero, was undoubtedly the best albergo we came upon during the whole tour. The house is large, clean, and well furnished, the food excellent, and the accommodation in every way of a superior character. The landlord, Francesco Giacomelli by name, is a sedate, well-informed man, a fair mineralogist and geologist, and proud to tell of the illustrious savants who have from time to time put up at his house and explored the neighbourhood under his guidance. He keeps collections of local minerals for sale, among which the orthoclase crystals struck us as being extraordinarily large and beautiful. Lying among these crystals, in one of Signor Giacomelli's specimen cases, the writer observed a small panannular bronze bracelet of Etruscan pattern and very delicate workmanship, coated with the fine green rust of antiquity, and learned on inquiry that it had been discovered, with other similar objects, in the cutting of a new road near the neighbouring village of Ziano. The find consisted of a sword, a torque, some fibulae, a number of bronze pins, and several bracelets, all of which, with this one exception, were immediately purchased by a Viennese gentleman who chanced to be staying in Predazzo at the time. It is singular that no vases seem to have been found, and no masonry to indicate that the road makers had broken into a tomb. It seemed rather as if some warrior had been hastily laid in earth just as he fell. On the other hand, however, this little bracelet, which, being accidentally mislaid, had escaped the Viennese collector, and so came to be bought for a few francs by myself, was evidently a female ornament. It is interesting to know that like traces of the northward migration of the Etruscan races, when driven by the Gauls from their settlements on the Po, have been found at Matri, Sonnenberg, and other places of South Tyrol. One notable instance being the discovery of an inscribed bronze bucket near the mouth of the Val di Sembra, which is in fact a westward prolongation of the Fiemme Valley, in 1828. I myself saw, in the little museum of Signor Sartoris at Primiero, a small Araballos-shaped vase of yellow clay, with red ornamentation, and which they told me had been found by himself in a field not far from the town. Of the remarkable sepulchre discoveries made at St. Ulrich in the Grodner Thal, A.D. 1848, and of Herr Perger's interesting Etruscan objects found in those graves, I shall have to tell farther on. The Nave d'Oro at Predazzo is a curious old house, and has belonged to the Giacomelli family for many centuries. The Giacomellis, as I have said elsewhere, were once noble, and their armorial bearings still decorate many of the old carved doorways, ceilings, and chimney pieces of their ancestral home. But that was long ago, and they have been innkeepers now for more than a century. Their visitors' book is quite a venerable volume, and contains, among the usual irrelevant rubbish of such collections, the handwriting of Humboldt, Fuchs, Richthofen, Sir Roderick Murchison, the Elie de Beaumonts, and other European celebrities. But some nefarious autograph hunter has abstracted one of the greatest treasures the book contained, the signature of the discoverer of the Georgium Sidus. Here, too, being one of the latest entries, a certain Dr. Reinhardt of Munich had exercised his Latinity in the following pithy sentence: Viator, cave tabernum Bernhard in Campidello. This ominous caution, so much the more impressive for being so vague, had the effect of deciding us against putting up for a night, or even for a midday rest, at the albergo in question. How many travellers since then, I wonder, have, like us, accepted the good doctor's salutary warning? And what would have happened to us if we had neglected it? The Val Fiemme, or Flem's Thal, about the middle of which Predazzo is situated, is but one portion of an immensely long, tortuous valley, called in part the Val Fassa, in part the Val Fiemme, in part the Val Sembra, which begins with the source of the Aviso in that depression between the Marmolata and the Monte Padon, which is known as the Fedaja Pass, and ends where the torrent debouches into the Isec at Lavis, 7 miles north of Trient. The collective name for this chain of valleys is the Val d'Avisio, and, except at quite the upper end of the Fassa division, it is the least picturesque of any that come within the compass of our journey. Leaving Predazzo after one day of rest, for, however attractive to geologists and mineralogists, it has no excursions to repay the unscientific visitor, we next pursued our course up the valley, proposing to put up for a couple of nights at Vigo in the Fassa Thal, and thence to explore the cirque of the Rosengarten, and ascend the Sasso dei Mugioni. It is a dull day when we start, having a somewhat dull journey before us. Our way lies at first between a double range of low hills partly clothed with pine forest, and partly with scrub. These hills, which are of the dark igneous rock thrown up from the Predazzo crater, hide the loftier peaks and are not picturesque at all. By and by comes a long straight road, terminated miles away by the village of Moena. Going along this road, a few unmistakably Dolomitic summits begin to peer up here and there above the barren hills to the left, and straight ahead, far beyond Moena, rises the Monte Boi, looking like an immense fort on a grand pedestal of rock, its battlements lost in the clouds. This Monte Boi, the southernmost bastion of the huge Sella Massive, is also known as the Monte Pordoi. It has been ascended by Dr. Groen, who calculates its height at 10,341 feet. Passing through Moena, a large, straggling, wood-cutting village, and crossing a couple of bridges, we leave the high road and strike up a steep mule path on the opposite bank of the torrent. It is the same valley and the same water, but here above Moena it is called the Fassa Thal. Looking back from this higher ground, we get a fine view over the Monte Latimer, 8,983 feet, and its far-reaching fir forests, while the wild peaks of the Rosengarten and Lang Kofel come into sight above the lower slopes of the Costa Lunga. End of section 27.